So this is something that at our PAX panel they kept talking about. And they kept talking about the future of MMOs and where it's going to go. And they talked about the unfortunate cycle of MMOs right now, which is release content and then it just dies. And I think getting frame drops right now. Hopefully it stabilizes, guys. I'm getting a few frame drops. Bear with us here. So they kept talking about basically saying that, it's going to be player-driven content. Well, player-driven content, for the most part, there's two ways that I look at this. And this was our biggest fault with that panel was they kept saying, oh, well, the future of MMOs is going to be player-driven content. They kept referencing things like Minecraft and what was the other one? Roblox. And we were like, why do you keep referencing this? Like, that's great. Yes, they're player driven content. Yes, they're big games. Yes, they're fun and engaging for people, but you never actually said how to incorporate that into an MMO. And that's the interesting topic, right? Is how do we get player driven content? I look at this as two ways. One is PvP, but you need to give reasons for the PvP. So you need to give us stuff to actually fight for. And then the other one to me is mods and allowing people to come up with their own gameplay styles and loops. So to me, neither one of those have been accomplished by New World, which is supposed to be the sandbox player-driven MMO.
Yeah, so I want to talk about a 2D MMO that I played way back in the day. This was released in the late 90s, and there were 4 classes, very basic, mage, poet, rogue, and warrior, and they all had these player-run subpaths. And what the GMs did is they said, listen, if you host events within the world, we will give you points, and you can trade in those points for, like, class-specific weapons for the whole class or class-specific spells. We'll create new spells and code those into the game. And so people came up with some really ingenious stuff. There was one, and you got to imagine, it's a little 2D MMO, where it was a little cross. They would put, it was 1, 2, 3 down and 1, 2, 3 across, and there'd be 4 people standing there, and you'd walk into the center thing and use an attack on somebody and then walk out. And the whole goal was to use these attacks and then heal through it, because there was a little bit of input lag. And it's so rudimentary when I look at games now, but it was a lot of fun back then. And it was a way that they created content. And you got to keep in mind, there were 3 subpaths for each of these 4 classes and clans and 2 armies, or 3 armies towards the end. And all of these things, you couldn't go more than, and keep in mind, this was a server with maybe 1,000 people on at any given time. You could not go more than an hour without there being an event being run by someone. Whether it was, one of the subclasses was Muse, and they would run poetry contests or haiku contests that you would mail in, or the spies would run they would put up a some sort of cryptogram, and the first person to solve it would win, and there'd be gold and items and things like that. That's a great way to create player run content, but it's hard to do in MMOs nowadays because they seem to want to handhold us through everything. Like, there's just nothing that we can actually go in and do with any of those kind of systems nowadays.
I think something very basic, and I think that maybe I'm trying to get into the mind of people that I wasn't there for the conversation of, but I think maybe why something like Minecraft or Roblox was brought up was because we see the moddable capabilities of the game. And at its base level of the game, there isn't a lot of depth to the game itself. And so the only thing that there is for those games is player-driven content, is the moddable servers, is the super servers. They just finished building the entirety of Middle-earth from Lord of the Rings. It took 9 years. That kind of stuff, absolutely, that's going to be huge, especially if those guys end up monetizing that in some way. I don't know if they're allowed to, but whatever. If that's monetized, people buying a Middle Earth server and then doing their own RP elements within it, now you literally have gamers creating content for other gamers to do content. It's this endless cycle of content on content on content. I don't think, I could be wrong, I don't think that in a MMORPG you can have that level of freedom and still call it an MMORPG. I think it's just a sandbox at that point. It's an MMO sandbox. Like, to me, there are very specific things tied to an RPG element. There's story. It's very story rich. It's very story focused. Everything you're doing has a purpose. I'm fighting this named monster for a reason. There's this super evil guy over here. I need to go kill him, or like take his helmet and place it on the altar. Like, there are very specific things that I need to do in the story element of an RPG. A sandbox, the story is whatever the fuck I want it to be. If I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, my story is to burn the world down. If I woke up on the right side of the bed, my story is to build a farm. Like, so it doesn't matter what you necessarily do in a sandbox beyond what you do to, just the other people around you, in the same server. But I think the moment you put that RPG tag on there, I think you lose some of your sandbox elements immediately.
Yeah.
Because you need a reason to do the things that you're doing. I mean, even Ashes of Creation, like, I think the reason why it seems like such a legitimate and believable world is because there is so much lore that we do know, and so much because of how much that we do know, we know that there's a lot more because Steven and Intrepid has said that there's a lot more. And so there, because we have seen so much, there's faith that there is more. I mean, he's developed entire pathfinders around it and stuff like that. So I mean, the dude just literally spits out lore whenever he feels like it. Like, and then Margaret yells at him. But I don't know. Like, I don't even know if New World would have been successful as their initial idea of a sandbox. I think it might have had maybe a couple tens of thousands of players, and it would have just been that, like maybe 100,000. And so I think them going a little bit more in the direction that they are going now is better for the game. But I think they just need to fucking go full bore into that direction, and then maybe introduce some more of those sandbox elements. They need to find, it's like what we've talked about with Ashes Combat. They need to find their baseline and then build from there. And I feel like New World doesn't have its baseline.
Well, and I think you hit two really good points there, right? But so the first one is you were talking about Minecraft and how, like, these people have made Middle Earth. They made Middle Earth in Minecraft. That's pretty friggin' insane.
It's insane.
The reason that they were able to do that is because Minecraft said, I'm not going to create dungeons for you or raids. I'm going to put together a crafting system out of blocks, and then I'm going to let your imagination go. And I think that's what we're losing in these, sandbox, quote unquote, MMOs nowadays, is they're not giving the players the tools to create their own stuff. Because even if it's like, well, the players will create their own events and their own things, they still need the tools to be able to do that. They still need something that it will interact the way that they want it to interact with.